Hey, my name is Jen, and I want to welcome you to The Unwound Being. This is a space where we explore different ideas and different topics that help us to unwind unconscious patterns so that we can truly step into our best and most expansive life. Today we're going to talk about the moment before reacting, and I'm sure most can relate to a situation or experience where something happens and it just feels like we go on autopilot. We just react, and then later, in thinking about how we reacted, wish that we had chosen a different way to respond. So that's what we're going to be looking at today. What it is that causes a reaction. We're going to look at the process that causes the reaction and where in it we actually have the capability to interrupt this almost automatic loop that is going on. And we'll talk about why we typically miss this moment that we are actually able to make a different choice unless we're aware. And then we'll talk about why this is so awesome to be able to do. What becomes possible when we become aware and start kind of making different choices. So why do we react? What does that process look like? We have these different sense doors, right? So eyes, ears, nose, touch, and that's just our physical senses. We won't even go into the other senses. But something stimulates one of these senses. So stimuli enters our consciousness. From there, that stimuli is going to cause sensation throughout our body. Once this sensation occurs, and this could be like sweating, it could be heat, might be like expansion or contraction. Once this sensation takes place, a story comes online to explain what's happening, justify or rationalize what's to come, because that leads into the reaction. So we have a stimuli, some sort of stimulus that creates a sensation in our body. Based on that sensation, our mind finds a pattern that those sensations fit. And based on, here we go, the neural pathways that we have strengthened throughout our life, that's going to indicate what our reaction is to this stimuli. So where the point of choice lives within this process is right between the sensation that arises and the story that we start telling ourselves. This is where we're able to interrupt this automatic pattern that keeps us reacting in ways that we maybe don't want to or aren't conscious of, right? So why we miss this, why we typically miss this is, and this is where the neural connections and everything will come into play. Our brain is really efficient, and it creates this structure of pattern recognition. And this is so that it doesn't completely have to rebuild a story every time we take in stimuli. It goes to patterns that it already recognizes, and then that's what causes our reactive loops. There's a term in neuroplasticity that says the neurons that fire together wire together, and this is exactly what we're talking about here. The programming that our mind is running from typically was put into place during early childhood when we needed different mechanisms to keep us safe and secure within our frame of reality. And some might find that they hold on to these patterns that were put in place at a very young age well into their adult life. And those patterns are the ones that are neurologically strengthened. So the neurons that fire together, wire together, is talking about strengthening neurons in almost the same way that a muscle would strengthen. The more you use it, the stronger it gets. So we have these reactive patterns that we're operating from, and that's where the story tries to come in and justify what is happening based off of these patterns. So we aren't typically aware that this is happening because we don't need to be. It simply comes down to our brain has created this tool so that we don't need to be aware of what's happening. But if we want to become aware of what is happening, there's a point within this process that we can zero in on. And I think I mentioned it already, but that moment between sensation and the story. So in a moment where sensation starts arising, we'll use the example of a car, right? You're driving in the car and somebody cuts us off. Somebody cuts us off. We take in stimuli from this experience, which causes sensation. Maybe it's rising of heat, right? It comes up, just rises, our face gets flushed or red, and we start gripping the steering wheel hard. And then a story pops online where it's, how could this guy do this to me? He's not even paying attention. What a jerk. Anything like that. Pretty much, honestly, it's pretty much anything to justify that I am correct. And the response or the reaction that I am about to give is a justified reaction, right? So in this example, it'd be somebody cuts me off, heat rises, arms clench, the story, this guy's a jerk. And then next thing you know, I'm screaming, throwing fingers up, and not in any way aware of what is actually happening. So the place that would be optimal to get to, right? And this isn't going to be a starting place, but ultimately how we would observe something like this in order to shift our patterning around it. Once the sensation is coming up, the sensation happens. If we can just take a breath, which it's simple and not easy at all, right? But if we could take one conscious breath and ask ourselves, what is actually happening right now versus what is this story that I am telling myself right now? Because the story that comes up, the story that comes to mind, may be a story that does not need to be part of the decision-making process anymore. So in pausing that moment and sensing that sensation, that is where we're able to step in and feel what is actually happening, like coming back to what is real. Here we go. Coming back to what is real, which is this process that's happening internally, right? Like this bioelectrical chemical process that's taking place, that is physically happening in the moment, and that's something to ground into. Whereas the story may be happening in the moment, it may not be happening in the moment. It's more just our justification of what is happening in the moment based on our patterning up to this time. So grounding into what is real in the moment, when we're able to actually pause, feel the sensation, and then not respond to the old story. And I just want to note here that this does not, like I said, it's not going to start off that this is happening in the moment. But this is something that we can just bring awareness to, right? So like if we have a situation, the car, for instance, we go on, we react in this patterned, conditioned loop that we are used to. And then later that night, laying in bed or whatever, coming back to the moment, and I guess this might be a good practice or a good exercise, kind of think about a moment throughout the day or throughout the week or whenever where you wish you had responded differently, right? So kind of go back there and see if you can feel what came up in that moment and what the story was around that experience. It doesn't really matter so much when you become aware. It just more so matters to become aware. And that could be hours after the experience, days after the experience. There's not really a time frame that this needs to happen in. But if we find ourselves coming back to that moment and dropping into the sensation that we experienced and the story that came up, next time that happens, we might be able to catch it a little bit sooner, right? And that's all that it's about, especially in the beginning, is catching it sooner, earlier. Because then, one day you'll be in the car and feel the sensation and you'll just stop. And that leads me to why this is so beneficial, like why this is so awesome. Because in that moment, right, where we choose, we actually get to make that choice to not start playing a story that leads us to this reaction. This is how we create space to make different decisions. There's a lot of power in this. And even some might say, I would say, just throw that out there, that being able to pause in this moment expands the capacity for choice. I didn't say that. It's a quote that I read not too long ago, and I've had it posted up everywhere. Regulation expands choice. Regulation is literally just being able to experience without reacting. It opens up this space. And in that space, those neural pathways that we were talking about earlier that have been solidified and that we've been operating from for a very long time, that's where we start to rewire. We start to create new neural pathways that offer a little bit more clarity and stillness in a moment that previously may have been more triggering. So I feel like this is so amazing because it almost offers us a way to live in a world of creation as opposed to living in a world that we have created. Once we break the patterns that we've been operating from for so long, we get to take in the world from a completely different vantage point. And I think that there's a lot of power in that, individually as well as collectively. So I hope that this was helpful in understanding what happens within us that causes us to react. And I hope that it offered a little bit of like agency in your power to choose by choosing to interrupt this stimuli to sensation to story to reaction loop by stepping in and just being able to interrupt it. It's the beginning of completely realigning life. And I don't know what that means, right? Like, I don't know what that means for you. I kind of have an idea of what it means for me. But I feel like it's big. It's big work to do, and I'm glad that you're here with me doing it. So thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed this content. I'll be back next Sunday with another episode. And I also want to offer or share a new offering that I have. It's a one-on-one clarity call. So if you're going through something and maybe have a lot of mental chatter around it, or a bit of anxiety, we can get on a one-on-one call, $77 for an hour, and kind of get into the body, quiet the mind so that clarity can arise, and it's not forced or too overly chatty. So if that sounds like something that might interest you, might be helpful for you, check the link in the description. You can either get a free 15-minute consult call to see if we're a good match, or you can just get the hour consult. So I hope to chat with you, maybe in the consult call, but definitely in the comments, and I'll see you back next week.